When you dive into the world of Polaroid instant photography, it can be quickly overwhelming. There's just so much stuff out there, so many choices, different film types, different cameras, new ones, old ones, and you just don't know where to start. Well, today I'm going to get you through that mess. I'm going to tell you about the different film types, the differences between cameras, as well as a list of cameras at different price points, so there's really a place for anyone to jump right into this amazing world of Polaroid photography. Hey, it's Charlie, and if you're new here, I'm an aspiring medicine student from Germany, and I just created this channel to have a creative outlet and have fun sharing and talking about stuff that I'm passionate about. And guys, Polaroids are like so fun, so let's just jump right into it. Alright, there are three different film types: I-type film, 600 type film, and SX70 film. I-type film is for the new Polaroid cameras like these ones, and what differentiates I-type film from the other films is that the I stands for intelligent, and it has a special AI layer that analyzes faces and therefore makes it better for portraits. No, that's obviously not true. I-type film is just 600 type film without a battery, because the new Polaroid cameras have a built-in rechargeable battery, therefore they don't need the battery from the film pack. And yeah, you heard that right. All film packs besides the I-type film have a battery in them to power the camera, like the light meter, the flash, and the motor, so the picture actually comes out of the camera. Without that battery, that isn't possible, but it's also quite a shame that for every 8 pictures you shoot with a film pack, one battery is somewhat wasted. The difference between 600 type film and SX70 film is basically just its sensitivity to light. So 600 type film has an ISO of 600 and is more sensitive to light, and SX70 film has an ISO of roughly 100 and is less sensitive to light. As a rule of thumb, 600 film can be used in any Polaroid camera, but sometimes for the cameras that use SX70 film, it has to be adapted to be less sensitive to light, like the SX70 film. And all the cameras that use I-type film don't need the battery of the 600 type film, but if you put a 600 type film into a newer camera, it'll just not use that battery, but it's built in. If you're still a little bit confused here, don't worry. I will just talk about the certain cameras that I would recommend, and if you see what film types are used in what cameras, I think it'll just clear up a little bit over time. Okay, so this is a list of cameras from the cheapest to the most expensive, and it also includes like the new Polaroid cameras, but also the vintage ones. So there's really a range of budget here. I would recommend, no matter what Polaroid camera you buy, that you buy it used, because especially the new ones are just too expensive, I think, for what they deliver. If you buy it used, the value that you get out of the price you pay is a lot higher, because they don't really degrade much, and even the vintage ones, they're in somewhat of a good condition. They're really capable for a cheap price, and in the end you're gonna spend the most money anyway on the film packs if you shoot more and more photos. So I wouldn't go out and spend a lot upfront on a camera necessarily if you don't know if Polaroid instant photography is right for you. So the first camera on this list is the Sun 600 camera. What's good about this camera is it has 600 type film, which is just great because you can buy that almost anywhere where they have Polaroid film, and it's usually never out of stock, and all the special Polaroid film editions are also all on 600, so you don't have to adapt anything to use the 600 type film. It also has a flash, so you can shoot pictures in worse lighting situations, and you can also have these kind of party pictures with flash. However, this camera is very cheap, therefore it has some obvious downgrades. First of all, it's a fixed focus camera, so it has a lens that just focuses on a certain distance that cannot be changed. Therefore, you can only shoot so much with it, but it has the advantage that you don't have to focus at all, if that's something you're into. But the pictures will be not as sharp if you would actually focus, because, well, it's fixed focus. It's kind of only in a certain zone, and if you miss that zone, the pictures are definitely blurry. It's also a plastic lens, which has worse image quality than something like a glass lens. And also the camera is not really the best looking, in my opinion. So if you're buying a Polaroid camera also to have just something nice to look at, then this camera is probably not the best choice for you, even though it's very cheap, and that's definitely a major plus for it. Next up, we have the Land Camera 1000. You can get that for about 40 bucks. And what's great about this camera is it looks really great. Like, the design is somewhat similar to the new Polaroid cameras, and I really like the design with this well-known rainbow pattern on there that kind of gives you the Polaroid vibes. I definitely like that. It's also relatively cheap, but it has also a fixed focus on a plastic lens, which will not give you the best image quality. It has no flash, and it uses Sx type film, so it will definitely not be great in lower light because you don't have a flash on there. You can buy one, but you know, that kind of puts it into a higher price range, so kind of defeats the purpose of recommending it for a certain price. And overall, if you want to have the Polaroid camera to shoot darker situations, definitely don't pick this one up. Next up, we have the Sun 660, and it uses 600 film, which is pretty dope. It has a autofocus system, which is pretty dope as well. And it has a flash, so you definitely get better looking pictures out of this camera than from the previous two. But it also only uses a plastic lens, and it's also, in my opinion, not the best looking Polaroid camera, and definitely a little chunky because it's just this giant plastic cube. Next up, we have the Polaroid Now. This is one of the newer Polaroid cameras, but you can get it used for not so much as well. This one is definitely very stylish looking. It has the advantage that you can use the cheaper I-type film on it, and you can use the 600 type film as well. It has autofocus, it has a flash, and overall I think it's a little more user-friendly than some of the older cameras. And you also get the cool new features like double exposure or self-timer in the camera built in, but it also uses a plastic lens, and you know, you don't get the retro vibes, so kind of a downer for me that you don't really have this cool experience with this camera. But it's a little user friendlier because it's kind of a redesigned version of the Land Camera 1000. Next up, we have my favorite, the SX70. I have this camera myself, so I might be a little biased recommending it, but it has the best form factor in my opinion. Just this folding design is really cool, and I really like that about this camera. And it has a glass lens, so the pictures look a lot sharper as long as you actually hit focus, because it has manual focus. This is not really a problem for me personally because I can manual focus, but whenever I give it to a friend, they're totally confused and the pictures usually turn out blurry. So that's kind of a problem if you have friends that are not really used to cameras, or if you yourself are not really into like manual analog camera stuff, then this is definitely not the one for you, because manual focus is definitely not for everyone. And as the name suggests, it has the SX70 film, which is less sensitive to light, and because the SX70 does not have a flash, you won't be able to take pictures in bad lit situations because this camera needs a lot of light. So if you want to shoot pictures at parties or something like that, this camera won't do the job for that. And it's also a little bit on the pricier side, and a lot of the cameras that are sold online are in bad leather condition, so you have to change out the leather as well if you want to have it good looking and good feeling. Therefore, this is gonna stack up the price a little bit. If you want to know how to replace the leather on the SX70, you can check out my other video where I tell you about how I did that on my own camera. Okay, so now at the end of the list, we have the SLR 680. This is basically the king of Polaroid cameras because it has autofocus, it has a glass lens, it has the SX70 design, even though I don't like it as much because it has all of these components built up on it. Therefore, it looks kind of chunky, and it's not really the nice form factor from the SX70. It also has a flash. It can shoot better pictures in low light. It has the 600 type film, so it is generally better in bad lit situations because the film is more sensitive to light. It's definitely one of the best cameras you can have, but it's really the most expensive out there. And if you just want to get into instant photography, I would definitely not recommend you to buy this camera because you don't even know if you actually like it. So I would definitely try it out with one of the cheaper models, see if you actually like that. If you made it this far, you are probably also interested in my SX70 video where I talk about how to use the camera, how to use manual focus, and how to generally shoot better photos with it. You can check that out here. And if you have a question, just ask it down in the comments below and subscribe if you like.